Hello everyone, my name is Azard Gumbs, the Assistant General Secretary of the People's Action Movement, and with me is
Tawanna Wigley, the Acting Chair of the National Young Pamites.
Welcome to our Facebook Live series, Keeping the
Promise.
Tawanna, the People's Action Movement, since its inception, has been a party that is always putting people first. We have many things to be proud of. When I think about the People's Action Movement, I think about the first Prime Minister. I think about an independent St. Kitts. What do you think about Tawanna?
To be honest with you, I think about, the SELF program, which has helped a lot of the students. It has paid for their exams. They were able to get books. Sometimes, your parents can't afford these things, and I think this was a luxury that the People's Action Movement would have provided. I think about many of the women who had children out of wedlock and the children being referred to as a bastard. The People's Action Movement was able to change that and have these kids now be able to take their father's surname. I also think about when women, or girls, who would have gotten pregnant in school, they weren't able to go back at that time, but then, the People's Action Movement came in and they changed that. A lot of women now today, they have their children and they also have their education.
And they have the People's Action Movement to thank for that. And when I think about the People's Action Movement, I think about, voting, because that's something that excites me to ensure that the People's Action Movement stays within power. And the People's Action Movement changed the age of voting from 21 to 18. So persons are, at the age of 18 are available, they can vote. I think about tourism, because tourism is a booming industry here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and I think about Port Zante being the brainchild of the People's Action Movement, and the Southeast Peninsula, the Sir Kennedy Simmons Highway, that was said by the other party as a highway to nowhere, but we see where the People's Action Movement has
a vision.
Always visionary, and had a vision, and look at how the vision has shaped St. Kitts and Nevis now. And that is why we have today our first guest, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, and we're going to speak with him about how is he keeping the promise in constituency number 8.
And we would like to welcome the Honorable Eugene Hamilton. We are super, super excited to have him as our guest.
Minister Hamilton is the representative for constituency number 8. He is also the deputy political leader of the People's Action Movement, and we are excited, as Tawanna said, to have him here with us. So, Minister Hamilton, we have some questions for you. And our first question is, how did Keon become so predominantly supportive of the People's Action Movement?
Thank you for that question, and let me also thank you for having me on this program. I hope during the next few minutes that we speak, I'll be able to share some information that will be of interest to especially young people.
Certainly.
I trust that will be. Keon. Keon is one of those areas that has, for many years, been, like most areas, supporting of the Labour Party. Somewhere in the late 1970s, however, as opposed to the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
There were things happening in the country that caused persons to begin to change their minds. For us, for example, in the 1960s, we got the opportunity for us to go to high school. 1967, 1968. It opened up our eyes. And then, of course, there were persons like Sidney Morris who were there, who came back with a degree, master's degree, and we felt that he was being frustrated. And so there was a sort of a frustration for the people in the community of Keon. And it all ended up being something that galvanized support against what was happening in the government first, and then for the next party that was vying to be in power.
So it started
as early as the 1960s.
People like me, for example, we were young.
Yeah.
We were involved in everything. We were playing football, we were playing cricket, we were teaching dance class, we were in everything. And so young people gathered around, so much so that we had large followings.
You know what I find interesting about that? Because Keon strongly supports the People's Action Movement. And I'm sure many young persons, when they think about Keon, they think about PAM. I'm sure many young persons don't think about Kenyan and thinking that it once was strong labor support.
A lot of people don't realize that. In fact, the numbers from 1980 to today, they show that there has been no other candidate than a PAM candidate that has amassed the number of votes that we have amassed. In fact, I know as far as I'm aware, Labour has only got 500 plus votes, and now they are under 500.
Wow.
While the PAM vote is over 1,000. So it is predominantly PAM support in KR.
And we want to thank the people of Kenyan for showing their support to the People's Action Movement.
You know, as the acting chair of the National Young Pamites, I have heard time and time again that the constituents of number 8 were really, really active in the 80s in the Pamites. Can you elaborate what they would have done?
Oh, let me congratulate you on becoming acting chair. I hope that when the elections are called that you do get installed as a chairperson. Women is always at the top of the list.
Thank you.
But I trust that that you'll be able to pull a number of young persons together and help them to appreciate where we have come from. In Kenyan, in fact in the whole country, let me don't focus it on Kenyan. In our country, what has happened was that after the former Labour regime was seen as one of oppressing basically young people. You mentioned earlier that you could not vote if you were not 21.
Exactly.
And you also could not get registered to vote until one day of the year. After that, you could not register again.
So even if you made 21, if you didn't make by the election time, if you weren't 21 at the time of the date to register, you will not vote.
And even if you were 21 and you missed the date, or they did not get you to the door before 6 o'clock, you would not be able to be eligible to vote in the next election.
Wow.
And so those are things that we were actually fighting against. And I believe I want to encourage you to invite people like Michael Morton and Hugh Heidegger to come and speak to the young people.
Yes.
I'll definitely do that.
Because they have had a history. In fact, there's an important history of former leader of the country. With one of the young Pamites holding a flag, and they said, "Arrest that flag!" So you need to hear that when you speak to people like Michael Morton to get that story. But yes, the young people got involved, and we were very active across the country. And in fact, during the 80s in particular, we had a thriving young Pamites across the entire country. It was funded by, I will say, support, partial support from an organization you call the CDU. We had the CYC, Caribbean Youth Conference, the Conrad Adenauer Foundation out of Germany. These were the people who were really fighting the Cold War, you know, trying to make sure that democracy, conservatism and all that is kept up through these islands rather than going towards communism. And so the People's Action Movement benefited during that period from the support of Conrad Adenauer Foundation. You would know Conrad Adenauer was, of course, one of Germany's leader, president for a long time. You had Adenauer, then you had Hubert Kohl, then you had, what's the lady's name was there last? Well, it will come to me. But they were all from the same political party.
Yes.
The Christian Democrats, that's what they were called. And so, because of that, our young people who had leadership like myself and other young people, I was really more like a coordinator. People like Sheldon, Pemberton, you know, Bob, Hardis, Sidney, those people, we traveled many places, Bahamas, all over the place, and taking the spirit, taking that young youth spirit, People's Action Movement spirit across the region. And I think it helped most of them to grow into what they are today.
Because many of them are active within the People's Action Movement today.
They are.
And very successful in their own spheres.
They are. So we engage in a number of things, you know, debates, challenges, fun. It was not all about hard work, you know. We used to play too, you know. But it brought us together. The main thing is we believed that we needed a change in the country, And that change eventually came and brought us untold development in the country never before seen. In fact, it was perhaps the most transformative period in the life of St. Kitts and Nevis, if you think about it.
Okay, well, you know, the National Young Pamites, it seems like we have a lot to live up to. You guys played a major role in, you know, getting us here today, because the 80s, I mean, we're in 2022. So we have to thank you guys for leading and passing the torch to us.
Well, listen, I want to take a moment to applaud Dr. Simmons and his team. When Dr. Simmons became Prime Minister, he didn't have, you know, political experience in government before.
Yes.
Remember when he won in 1979, he was denied the opportunity to do even in Parliament. For 12 straight months and beyond, they did not hold a Parliament to even let him be sworn in Parliament.
Yes. So unfortunate.
This is why I usually say, you know, time and time again we see when you try to deny people things, they eventually become leadership, leading those things. I think it happened to me. I was thrown out of Parliament, I came back in government.
Yes.
You know, you look at other things like that has happened. Even with, if I may say,
yes.
our colleague in although this is a PAM program, our colleague in PLD was thrown out. He came back in as Prime Minister. When you throw people out, they come back.
I guess it's the saying, what is to be will be. You know. So, Mr. Hamilton,
Yeah.
You are now entering politics, and you are active from a youth, and now you're going into active politics. Would you have experienced any victimization, and if so, how did you cope with such?
There's so much victimization. I'll just limit my discussion to one. Back in 1995, I was working with the National Caribbean Insurance Company. I had been working there for 6 years. And when I got to National Caribbean Insurance Company, they were already operating for 16 years. In those 16 years, they'd only grown to $5.1 million. And in the next 6 months, they would go to 14.2 million.
Yes.
But when the government changed in 1995, I got terminated about October. I was told to pack up the company's vehicle and deliver the keys to a particular person whose name I will not call. You know, and it really was strictly political, because I must tell you, there's a bit of background, and I'm not sure if I can go into it. Same to say that I had recently introduced there's a background to it. Safe to say that I had recently introduced what you call universal health insurance to the public servants.
Yes.
And the opposition thought that that might have been a winning ticket for the People's Action Movement, so they decided to take it on.
Wow.
And by taking it on, they libeled me.
Yes.
They famed me, and I had to then take action in court against Cedric Libel and the former Prime Minister. And I think they'll never forget it. Put it that way.
Yes. Very interesting.
And let me tell you something. It was perhaps the most, you know, it was a very difficult period. But when things happen to you in life, and I hope this message goes to you, when things happen to you in life, don't see it as if it is the end of the road. See it as an opportunity to go further. In other words, when you get knocked down, don't stay down. Get up and go again.
You know, as you say that, it reminds me of a quote that are saying, it's hard to beat a man who does not quit. It's hard to beat a man that does not quit.
I remember when I got terminated from the National Caribbean Insurance Company Limited, my mortgage was about $4,600 per month. It immediately changed to $6,000 per month.
Wow.
And I had no income. And the chant was, we're going to sell his house, we're going to sell his house.
Wow.
I had only built my house in 1994, 1 year before I got terminated.
Wow.
And so during that period, it was a really difficult time. Eventually, I had to then refinance and take my mortgage out of National Bank and start again.
Well, Mr. Hamilton, a very interesting story. And we have with us a question by one of your very own constituents. And so we're going to focus on that constituent right now. We're here at Port Zante with a constituent from constituency number 8, Nisha. And Tawanna, tell Nisha why we're here today.
Basically, why we're here today is to gather some feedback for the Honorable Minister Eugene Hamilton. We want him to understand how his constituents feel about him, and in the process, we're here to get that information from you. If you had Honorable Minister Eugene Hamilton here with you right now, what is one thing you would ask him?
One thing I'll ask him is what prompted him to join active politics?
That is a very good question. And what do you think about Minister Hamilton as your representative?
He's a great representative and he loves his constituents.
Wow.
That is what we always hear when it comes to Eugene Hamilton.
That's what anyone wants to hear when it comes to any of the politicians or the ministers. People want to feel the love, they want to feel the presence of any minister in each constituency.
So we're going back. Join us in studio.
In 1967, in fact, maybe I should say 66. In fact, let me back up. You have to understand that history is very important in all of what we're doing today, otherwise we're going to relive it if you don't understand it. By 1960, the United Nations had passed what you call Resolution 1514, so that all of our territories will go towards independence. You must not, it was seen as a human rights violation if the people were not having their own government, governing themselves. And though it took Britain until 1966, in fact early 67, to pass the act in their own parliament, we were the first with Antigua to go into what we call statehood in relation with Britain. Britain responsible for foreign affairs and defense. So when we got the opportunity to go into statehood in 1967, Anguilla began to rebel. Anguilla wanted no part of that. And as a result, it ended up that very year, 1967, that there was something that happened in St. Kitts that was blamed on PAM, which may very well have had root in what was happening with the Anguilla situation. And as a young teenager, 13 or so, began to realize something was wrong about that. Something was wrong about that. Around the same time I was in school, and there was a teacher who had been terminated by the government because he had allowed the Christmas festivities to be held in the schoolyard. It used to happen all the time, and all of a sudden they felt maybe it was too influential on the other side, and they decided to terminate the teacher. So teachers were going to strike, and there was supposed to be an island-wide teachers' strike, and when it came to it, and I was in school getting ready for exams, the Labour leader, Bradshaw, decided to break the strike. In my young impression of mind, how can a Labour leader who's supposed to be leading strike or break strike?
Yes.
And so we, it's something that I grappled with. Yes. But something is wrong with that. So from there, the impression began in my own mind, and how, who really should I be supporting in going forward? And that was the start of it. And then in 1967, as I said before, and I say this now, when those guys were being tried and the court dismissed them, then they would lock them up again, and it doesn't matter, and then they would be in jail, and then you'll hear that they're shining up the guillotine to cut off the neck, and they would have them bathing in the prison, hosed down with fire hose water, naked as they born. You realize you couldn't support that.
Yes, I understand.
And so right away, it channeled at least my thoughts, and quite a lot of us, towards going towards opposition. We began to analyze more what was happening in the country, and that shaped that journey for us. So that by 1975, I should have been able to vote, but again, at 21, I didn't get to register. Then when I got the opportunity to register in 1979, and we were talking about bringing back home Sidney Morris, I took on the K-On, championing the cause in K-On. And we were involved in everything, like I said, dance, teaching dance, ballroom dancing, cricket, football, everything. And soon we had the whole community with us. And that is what gave us that, that strong support that in K-On has not really looked back since.
Excellent. And we're going to take a short break, and we're going to get right back to the program.